And here we go with another episode of Sales Chatter. Today on Data Day, we are going to talk digital brokerage and how many carriers left the industry last month. Well, let's continue this legendary sales talk with Data Day today with Dean Crook and Jeff Dickinson. How are you gentlemen doing and what is happening?
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Dean, digital brokerage. What are we going to start with? Are we going to start with the new data on how many carriers left the industry, how many came in?
Yeah.
Where do you want to start, brother?
Let's start there because I think it sort of feeds into a lot of capacity discussions that brokers are probably having. I mean, broker numbers are down to about 5% year over year. So there are brokers exiting the industry because we're at the sort of bottom of that margin compression curve for the non-asset side. But the data this morning is kind of interesting on the number of carriers that are leaving the industry. I pulled the data this morning. So it's as of yesterday afternoon for the number of carriers that entered and exited the market. I think the key
in
word,
October, right?
Yeah, the word "and" is important, right? Because it wasn't just all exits. There was the highest number of carriers entered the market. Sorry, let me get that right. Reactivated. So these are reactivations of old authorities. This is a really interesting data point. We had the highest number of carriers reactivating their authorities in October since May of 2021.
Okay, so hold on. We're talking carriers that were industry that deactivated their authorities at some point in time and now have reactivated.
So you got three sectors, right? You got reactivations, new authorities on the asset side, and revocations, carriers that leave. And so for everyone today, you've always got carriers coming and going. But what's really interesting with this current data set, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I've got a couple, but the net of it is that we lost about 1,800 more long haul carriers in October compared to September, which we predicted would happen because of the surge in diesel post July 4.
Yeah.
But the number of exits was about 12,700. That was the third highest this year behind March and January, so a pretty high number. But the new carrier rate, so these are the number of new carriers that enter the industry, they've been steadily declining, not surprisingly. They're down 37% year over year, but reactivations continue to climb. They're up 23% year over year and the highest since May of 2021. So there's the net of it is we've lost nearly 160,000 carriers in 12 months, but gained 132. So the net loss is about 26,000. So
we're still on a losing,
we're still losing capacity.
Thinning out.
Yeah, but part of this is seasonality. I'd love to get your take on this because why would carriers be reactivating their authorities at an increasing rate, especially since July? And I have a theory it could be seasonality. Right, so carriers are aware there'll be more volume and capacity is leaving the industry, and maybe they see some optimism in the direction of rates and demand, or maybe it's just carriers having a last go at this before they go out of business. They've deactivated their authorities, been sitting on the sidelines, driving for another company, reactivate their authorities, get their truck out of mothballs, and have a crack at it during this busier season. So there's two theories that I have. Beyond that, I can't explain what carriers are seeing in the long haul sector other than seasonality and opportunity that's in the regional areas.
Could it possibly be, the first thought that came to mind was, made some money in 2021.
Oh, yeah.
Took advantage of being able to sell your equipment for double the price of what it would normally be, maybe did that. And now equipment's come down in price. So they're like, well, I made a ton of money. I may as well invest a little bit back and see if I can make some more in the next year and kind of give it that go.
But have the tractors gone down in price? I mean,
used tractors have gone down in price quite a bit. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like if I mean, there's two ways, Jeff, right? Like if you paid so much more for your tractor during COVID, you almost have to try and stay in business to pay off, you know what I mean? But I'm wondering if some of these people, and it'd be interesting if we pulled like a couple of dozen and saw when they canceled their authorities to when they reissued. I'm wondering if they were some of the people that maybe were in prior to COVID, kind of during COVID, and then when they realized rates were about to drop, kind of cancel their authorities, sell their equipment before equipment drops, kind of like what people did with homes. They saw how much homes were increasing, they would sell. And I know 3 people that sold, made, you know, an extra $300,000-$400,000 on their home because of bidding wars.
Right.
They took money, put it all in the bank, rented a house for 3 years, and now that homes are coming down, you know, they made an extra $300,000-$400,000 on the sale of their home. They spent $60,000 on rent, so they're still up that $240,000 or $340,000, and now they're going out and buying a home because the price dropped. So I'm just wondering if
let me ask you this.
Yeah,
let me ask you this. If you sold your business and you got rid of your tractors and anything, right? Everything like that. Would you seriously come back into the market the way that it is right now and take that risk? I mean, think about that. I mean, everything is down. I mean, we all talked about it many, many months ago about how much money all these carriers made during the pandemic, and hopefully they banked it, right? Hopefully they banked it, and they thought it was going to continue and the market was going to go, and then all of a sudden it dropped through the floorboards, right? Where are they getting this money? I don't care if they invested it or whatever. I mean, the house markets went through the roof, all of this kind of stuff, and still the market is down right now. So, I mean, are you out of your mind to get into this business and reactivate, you know, your authority to do this? I mean, there's no indication.
Jeff, here's what I see. Here's what I see, though.
It's terrible.
I look at it and I say, in the down markets is the greatest opportunity for people. And you look at kind of just how it all works. Like, you look at how many companies just became monsters during the 2008, 2009 economy collapse. And a lot of people didn't. I'm wondering if these people are reissuing their authorities. They have the money maybe to buy out companies or to buy out smaller, 2 or 3 owner kind of thing. Yeah, something. I mean, if you, and that's why I said it'd be interesting to see when they got rid of the authority to when they activated it, right? And I'm thinking if you're, in the industry, you get out at a really good time, you might be looking and saying, okay, rates are at a lowest now, but now I can get everything the cheapest. So if I get in the market now, I'm priming my position for when the market turns. Maybe. I mean, again, it's all speculation, right? But
so to answer Jeff's question, I don't think carriers are coming back into the long haul sector. I'm absolutely convinced there's no opportunity there, other than some regional areas where you could still do fairly well, right? So you've got to think regionally, not nationally. But for example, there was a shortage of trucks during the recent tomato harvest in California. They couldn't find trucks. So I think I've heard the same thing when it comes to apple cartage from the farms, to the processing plants. So I think there's areas where carriers are seeing opportunity, and I come back to my 2 friends that sold their long haul reefers and are now doing auto hauling around, Natick here in Massachusetts. I've looked at the revenue numbers because they sought some advice from me on their, the P&L from the trucks that were running there. These guys are grossing about 20 grand a month revenue, which is fairly good for an owner operator on short haul, but very low expenses because their mileage is not that high.
That's true.
So I think they and both of those were reactivations of old authorities, but the authority was an interstate long haul authority. So I think there's a bit of that going on. But I think, Jeff, you're right. I don't think anybody would be seeing opportunity in the long haul unless it was dedicated contract work, as opposed to spot work. In the spot market, like
the final mile and stuff like that, super regional deliveries. I can see that. You do see that right now.
Yeah,
which could be part of the reaction.
Anything like that really indicates, just like Jason Miller was saying. I mean, there's no real indication that says there's a boom that's going to come real soon. It's not. It's not going to happen.
And he wrote, I think, in JOC this week or even today that, capacity equilibrium in terms of supply and demand is going to be a ways off, because I think capacity is leaking out slowly. But I think that hides the fact that it's probably leaking out faster in the long haul interstate area where it's more volatile, and it's probably, it could even be increasing in the final mile space. We just don't know that. We don't know the breakdown of where those carriers are coming and going. So the net is we're still losing total capacity in the for hire interstate spot market sector. But if you look at total trucks on the road, that's still growing. Like total capacity in terms of number of trucks and carriers is still increasing very slowly. Like it's always increasing. It's just that some sectors are decreasing, others are increasing faster than the average.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's why that explains partly why spot rates are still bouncing around. You know, they're up one week, down the next. They're still bouncing around. Still no discernible sign that they're going to go up anytime soon. Although this week's data generally should start to pick up reefer capacity. Our short-term forecasts have spot rates for refrigerated trucks going up till the week after Thanksgiving. That's a normal seasonal occurrence. I don't know how that'll affect dry van. Flatbeds just dead flat to down. Not a lot of good news there. Construction spending numbers up today, up about 10.4% on non-residential construction. You know, construction spending up overall is up about 8% year over year. That's good news. It's not enough to move the needle because housing numbers are still way down. So flatbed's still having a very tough go of it. So that's,
you know, we're finding with some of our flatbed customers, it's getting the product.
Right.
Like I do a lot of brick, and they're having huge material issues, like massive. Never seen it. Material issues like this, not even during COVID. And everybody I ask, nobody can explain it. Like I ask all the companies, like, okay, so what's the, like, because I'm thinking, how can I get involved in maybe being part of the solution, right? Can I, on my spare time, source information or something? Right. And they're like, no, it's just the material comes in. So like literally it'll be, I think this week we got 4 Wednesday, 4 Thursday, 4 Friday, and we're normally running 5 a day.
Right.
And for the last 2 weeks, there's been zero loads have left the facility. And then they're saying next week we might move up to 15 or 16. And then we're going to kind of in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, they're going to be out of material again. So it's going to drop. And I'm kind of sitting there going, whoa. So there's projects that are on hold because there's no brick to continue moving forward with the builds. And so I found it to be a very interesting position to be in, if you will.
Is it Canada or US?
It's in the US where the manufacturing is happening, and it's being delivered into Canada for building in Canada. But it's an ongoing issue. Like there was one point in August, I think. We're November now. So it would have been actually September. The first 2 weeks of September, not a single load left the facility. And then all of a sudden there was like 45 a week for the next 3 weeks. And then there was none. And it's just like this huge up and down. And it's not employees. Like originally, remember during COVID, it was like, okay, we don't have the employees. We got double the freight, half the employees. This is their employees, they said everything's great. It's the raw material to make the product.
Right.
Huge issues.
The raw material for bricks is sand?
Sand and clay, I think.
Clay, yeah.
Sand and clay. And
yeah.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. And so here's the thing is we've got, like where I live, we've got 3 huge pits of like that orange kind of red clay that you see most bricks are made of, right? That like orangey red brick that just like a normal brick. We've got 3 huge plants near us, and there's so many trucks coming out of those facilities. So I don't know what the reasoning is in the US, but
that's interesting. Could it be that people are building more brick homes versus timber?
That would be up in Northeast, in Vermont, New Hampshire, with the cold.
Right.
Because the bricks, right, they hold in the heat.
Yep.
Right. And the cold as well. And it provides that shelter. You don't really see too many, you know, up near White River Junction in that area up there. It's all brick all over.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking about the alternative to high timber prices, you know, high lumber prices of years gone by. Maybe that was part of it.
Well, you know, like, so it was when, you remember when we had the polar vortex in Texas, right? In Canada, it was almost impossible to get pools
Yep.
to get pumps, to get all this stuff. So
Yep.
people actually started moving to a different kind, an ICS pool,
Right.
an ICF pool, right? Which is literally like how you build foundations of homes.
Yeah, those fiberglass ones.
Yeah, fiberglass and ICF, and so they started to, and also container pools became huge.
True.
People using ocean containers as pools and like revamping them because we were unable to get anything, so people had to get creative. And I mean, it very well could be that, you know, you're using more brick, you're pouring concrete in the brick to, you know, radiate the heat inwards and radiate the inward heat in. You know what I mean? Like it's, I mean, I know a couple of people that built homes with brick and straw in the middle of it, and literally heat their whole home with a single fireplace.
Yep.
Like wood stove in essence,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's like everybody's getting creative on how they build and environmentally friendly and environmentally, you know, conscious about how they build. So I don't know. I mean, great question. Anyone out there that knows, please, by all means, join the convo.
So I think the sort of net of, you know, the data this week is that it's hard to nail down any sort of certainty around a recovery, freight recovery until the spring of next year. There's no question that we've got no data points to support that. What I can say is that, you know, every time diesel surges, diesel surged from July 4, all of July and August, diesel went up, you know, something like 18%, right? Diesel prices. And then they kind of backed off a bit in October, July, August. September was flat, October down a bit, up, set up 1 week, down the next. But that surge in July and August, as we predicted, would bite carriers in sort of that 2-month period afterwards, which is why you've seen that exodus in October. We saw it last year in the summer. We saw it when Russia invaded the Ukraine. So the data point to watch is if this conflict in the Middle East widens and we start to see distillate impacted by crude oil shortages, you know, what we lose with Iran, if it widens, we pick up with some of the other countries that are increasing production. So the funny thing, it's not funny, I mean, it's unusual that the market hasn't reacted to the Middle East crisis in terms of oil going up. In fact, it's gone the opposite direction. So it's really surprising that oil and diesel hasn't moved based on the fear of this crisis widening to be more regional. So it's a data point I'm watching really carefully because that could accelerate the exodus of carriers again and maybe change when equilibrium arrives.
Well, because also we're getting into winter too, right? So more people are going to consume oil to heat homes and that kind of stuff. And people are now going to idle their vehicles longer to warm them up. So then fuel consumption's going up. You would think that we would already be in that position where rates are starting to skyrocket.
Not yet. Not yet. I mean, that's a north of the I-40 phenomenon, mostly the northeast where Jeff and I live, where heating oil is going to be a big deal.
So do you think that they'll start fracking again if that happens, Dean? I mean, when you think about it, I mean, we have the world's largest oil, you know, area in the world.
Yep.
Do you think that will trigger that?
So. Yeah, I think there's some signs of it on the Baker Hughes rig count. There's some signs that it's starting.
Yeah.
It's, you know, oil once if
it just makes sense.
The World Bank was talking about $150 a barrel this week, which I think is maybe, you know, probably on the higher end of optimism. So even if oil does hit $100 a barrel, I mean, you have to think it would attract people back into the drilling business.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
Logically, I should say.
Logically, yeah. But I think the data point to watch is, so there's upside and downside, right? If oil goes up, so do fuel prices, but carriers have got more stuff to haul. Right? Whenever you know, flatbed carriers in particular will be hauling more drill pipe casing, proppants, machinery, anything to do with drilling holes in the ground. That they will
a lot of hazmat too, because they use a certain fluid, which is hazmat, that they pour down into these holes so that the high-speed drills don't get locked up with the lock on it.
Yep, exactly.
You know, so the hazmat industry is going to boom considerably if that does take place, and it'll happen rather quickly.
Yeah, and the guys holding the black oil out of the fields, you know, that raw crude, there'll be a lot of activity. So there'll be winners and losers, I think, but generally when crude goes up, you know, carriers do benefit. So that's where we are this week. I think what I'll be telling is on next week's show, when we talk about this week's data, if we're not seeing any observable movement in rates, then that might be an indicator that seasonality is just not moving the needle in terms of demand. We're just not seeing it there.
So by next week, we should have some movement because of U.S. Thanksgiving coming up and all that kind of stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Normally.
Okay. So at least we got a baseline for next week.
You'll see some, I mean, regionally, you'll see tight capacity. You know, I talk about national numbers, but regionally, you know, the Diwali Festival of Lights next week in Yuba City and Sacramento, you're going to have a lot of Punjab Sikh drivers taking the week off. Yep. And brokers that I talk to will tell us it's very hard to find refrigerated trucks out of Salinas, Stockton, Yuba City, that northern part of the Central Valley. Very hard to find trucks next week. The biggest Diwali festival is in San Antonio. That's one of the bigger populations. So anywhere where and it's a different time each year. So whenever that festival occurs, you generally see very tight capacity for refrigerated trucks.
And then comes the Christmas tree season in the next 2 to 3
road
weeks.
Salt and
all that. You're going to see heavy movement in that, especially in the Northwest territories, in Carolinas, Northeast as well.
A lot of Nova Scotia. There's a blog post out next week. My local farm stand are pulling from Nova Scotia because of the drought 9 years ago in Maine. It takes that long for the furs to grow. But they're multi-drop loads. Carriers don't like them. Multi-drop. Got to have a leaf blower to get all the needles out. Like you can sit under a load for days. Like they want it moved the day they cut the tree. Like you got to go as soon as they load it. That's why
you got to deal with sap too, Dean. You got to deal with all that sap, which is not easy to clean out.
Job. It's a sticky job, boys.
Not easy. You have to use a certain detergent to get rid of all that.
Cold, and all live, unload, load. Like it's
diesel. Use diesel. It'll get it off.
Just don't light a match.
I remember a guy telling me, just use diesel. I'm like, dude, you want me to use gas to get this off? He's like, yeah, just use diesel. It's all good. I'm like, okay. All right. He goes, oh, no, man, cleans everything. I'm like, I bet. Yeah. So, Dean, we got 6 minutes. What about digital brokerage? What do we got to say about digital brokerage?
This is kind of more Jeff's domain, but, you know, this is about relationships, I think, and trying to automate essentially what Jeff does. Right. So if you want to take all of the inefficiency out of the people side of our business, it sounds good in theory, but I've never seen substantial efficiencies at scale in trucking because there's so much stuff that goes wrong. Like I don't know how you automate the stuff. And just think about a trailer pool. Like, I mean, what did Convoy lease? About 4,000 trailers. I think the idea of I think it's called a grey trailer pool, where you have a sort of a massive trailer pool that everyone accesses. I think that's a brilliant idea. I tried to get that going at Spirion Trailer Telematics because I thought that if you could have a trailer pool that everyone could access, you could eliminate a lot of efficiencies and deadhead miles and et cetera, et cetera. The downside is that if you have a common trailer pool, they degrade really quickly because no one loves them. No one cares. And your CSA scores are going to go through the roof because they're all going to be falling apart faster. Unless you have a tightly managed trailer pool like ITS Logistics does in Reno, Nevada. Right? You've got to have incentives for the carriers to look after the trailers. But it's very hard to manage a trailer pool that, you know, is kind of trying to decrease that efficiency because even with trailer telematics, I never saw the efficiencies in a drop trailer program emerge. There was always inefficiencies, and it was more a physical thing because of where the last trailer was dropped on the front row. It was the first trailer picked for the next load. So the trailers at the back of the pool never got loaded, never moved.
And they go out of service in the yard, and then you got to bring in a mobile service to get them back in service. And not only that, when you're doing a trailer pool and somebody else is hauling the trailer, your trailer brakes pretty much stop that truck the entire way from origin to destination. Right.
So great in theory, but you know, Convoy built a business around a very deep tech stack, whereas traditional brokers can scale headcount up and down pretty quickly. Very hard to do that with a tech-heavy business model where you've got, you know, highly paid engineers that are very smart people. It's hard to scale those numbers up and down. But I think what they started with was a wonderful idea that everybody else kind of picked up on. Like they were sort of the innovator, and it didn't allow them to create some sort of a moat around their business in terms of automation of all of this.
3 things I'll say, all right, for AI and ML. 1, emotional intelligence. Ain't going to happen. Number 2, God gave humans hearts and souls, and there's a lot of empathy in this business. And a machine or AI will not be able to do that. I don't care. You can't buy a heart and soul. I'm sorry.
Right.
You know,
No,
if
you're
you're embedded into this industry
Yep.
and you know it like the back of your hand and
Right.
you understand tones, dialects, you
Right.
know, body language, that's whole different. Machine language and AI can't read that. I don't care what anybody says. And once that's gone,
Mhm.
you're going to miss a lot of stuff. It's going to be
Plus I see a lot of people, and excuse my ignorance if this is totally wrong, but I see a lot of digital brokerage as just for the people that just want the lowest rate possible, don't want to talk to anybody because they don't feel like either letting somebody down or they have no desire to negotiate. Just give me the lowest number, and I want to pick the lowest number without anyone going, well, why didn't you pick me? How come? What can I do? And that's where digital brokerage comes in very handy. Is
Well,
you
I
can
mean,
put a load out, you have 5 people quote on it, you choose the lowest person, the other 4 people have no idea where the load is or what happened, and you just kind of plug away from there. I think it's a good idea from that respect, but it's like Jeff said, how do you get a hold of a human when things go wrong? Because our industry has so many tentacles that have to be covered during a freight shipment that a machine just can't cover, not even an AI chat bot or anything. Like,
yeah.
it's
I mean, there's a lot of clean loads you can match, right, with technology. There's a lot of
Yes.
just easy loads, right? But that's kind of high volume, predictable. You know,
Yep.
when you get in outside of the, you know, freight that's sort of nice and easy to load and it's simple, which I think, I don't know, I don't think it's the majority of freight. I think most freight out there has got some sort of a wrinkle in it that you haven't thought about if you're trying to automate it. I just say that from a driver's perspective because there's so much stuff you can't
Oh my God.
Yeah.
on the road. So
Yep.
yeah, I think you're right about market timing too, because you know if you're always going to come in and buy market share with the best price, you know when the market turns, that's going to be hard to move those customers back in the other direction because
Yep.
it's going to be around. You know, it's going to depend on what part of the cycle you're in.
Yep. I agree.
Yes, sir.
I agree. Good day, boys. That was a lot of information, Dean, all at once. That was a good pack. That was jam-packed. I got to make sure I stop booking meetings at 11 because I feel like we should have had a little bit more time to dissect it.
It always is, Dan. Come on now.
I know. You know what? I'm like, Dean and I were talking the other week about how do we make the day-to-day Wednesdays a little shorter for people, give them more of an impact and less of a time. And I think we just like all drank from a fire hose there. So enjoy. I hope you're all nourished.
I gotta get a fire extinguisher, so I'll see you guys later.
Yeah, nourished and hydrated, my friends.